Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we will be studying about data models. I hope that you have watched my previous video related to database management system. So let's get started. What is data model? Data model is the collection of concepts that is used to describe the structure of a database. In your database, you are going to store your interrelated data. Now, if any of the member of an organization wants to understand how the data is organized, then they are not going to look for the queries or the core part. For them, you will be using some set of symbols and the tags to represent the data. That is nothing but the data model. So you can say that data model is a collection of concepts that is used to describe the structure of a database. How you are going to describe the structure of the database? For that purpose, you will be using the data models. So you can say that it is used to describe how your data is stored, how your data is accessed and updated in your database management system. So which are the various data models that are available? There are many data models that are available, like your hierarchical model, your network model, your ER model, relational model, object-oriented model, object relational data model, flat data model, semi-structured data model, associative data model, context data model. So there are many data models available, but we'll be concentrating on the few and the widely used data models. So first is the hierarchical data model. What do you understand by the hierarchical? What do you understand by the word hierarchical? So here you are going to represent the data in the form of hierarchical tree structure. You are going to represent your data, you are going to organize your data in the hierarchical tree structure. So the hierarchy start from the root. The hierarchy start from the root, which has the root data, and then it expand in the form of tree, adding child node to the parent node. So you can just see an example of the hierarchical data model, that is the shoes. Again, it can be categorized in the women's shoes and the men's shoes. So over here, the women's shoes and the men's shoes are the child node of the parent node, that is the shoes. So you can go on categorizing it depending upon your need of an organization. So you can say the real world relationship of the project can be easily depicted in the hierarchical model. So where this hierarchical model, you can just think where it is being used. It is used in the sitemap of a website. So we can represent the relationship between the elements. So you have to remember that in the hierarchical model, the data is represented in the form of hierarchical tree structure. So just another example of this hierarchical tree structure, that is again, for example, if you can see of college can be divided into various departments. Their infrastructures, again the department can be divided into course, teachers and students and so on. So over here you can see the department and the infrastructure are the child node of the parent node, college. Then the course, teacher and students are the child node of the parent node, department. So over here you can see that the travel is very fast. The traveling from the parent node to the root node, or from the parent node to the child node, is very much simple and it is fast. So any change can be easily reflected in the child node. Any change in the parent node can be easily reflected in the child node. So you can see that integrity of data is maintained. Then what is the disadvantage of this hierarchical tree structure? The disadvantage is, if you want to represent the complex relationship, then you cannot use this, because over here a child is having only one parent. If you want to see, if you want to show some kind of relationship in which a child can have a multiple parent, then you cannot use this hierarchical tree structure. Then what you are going to use? So for that you are having another model, that is the network model. Next is the network model. What is network model? Network model is the extension of hierarchical model. Then what is the difference between network model and the hierarchical model? In the hierarchical model, you can have only one parent, whereas in the network model, you can have more than one parent. So you are over here in the network model, it is going to replace with the tree-like structure with the graph-like structure. So in the network model can be represented, the data can be represented in the network model in the form of graph. So the main advantage is you can show many of the relationship among the data elements, and many of the path is available. And as number of path is available, why I am telling number of path is available? For example, if a child node have multiple parent, then it can be travel via this node also and via this node also. So over here the data access is fast and simple. So network model is the extension of hierarchical model, and in the hierarchical model you are going to represent your data in the form of hierarchical tree-like structure, and over here you are going to use the graph. So for example, this is the example of the network model. That is, the college node is going to have a department and library which is shared by a student. So to reach a student, you can travel from college to department and to the student, or you can travel from college to library to a student. Next we'll study about another model, that is the entity relationship model. Now this ER model is widely used model. It is very important as a student because you might be creating projects in your final year, and then you will be using this model to represent your data. So you should know the basic about what is the ER model. In our upcoming videos, upcoming lectures, I'll be explaining in depth about the relationship or how you're going to represent your data using the ER model. So over here, ER model is a high level data model diagram. It is a high level data model diagram. It is a pictorial form to make it easy for the stakeholder to understand. Any of the people, those who are involved with your project, they can easily understand what is your data, how the data is being related to one another. So for this ER diagram, the very important three components are entities, attributes, and relationship. What is an entity? Entity is the real world thing. It can be any real world thing. It can be a person, it can be a concept, it can be a place. For example, teacher, student, course, all these are the example of the entity. Entity is the real world thing. Next is the attribute. What do you understand by attribute? Attribute is the property. Whatever property that is held by an entity is the attribute. Like, for example, if you are going to take teacher as an entity, then the attribute of the teacher will be age, name, salary, ID. All this will be the attribute of an entity. And relationship, how the elements are related to one another. If you are going to think about teacher is one entity and department is an entity, then how the teacher and department are linked with one another. That is, teacher works for a department. So the entity relationship model, you can say that it is a high level data model diagram. It can be easily represented and easily understood by the stakeholder. And the three important components of this ER model are entities, attributes, and relationship. What is the entity? Entity is a real world entity, real world thing. Attributes means property, and relationship means how the number of entities are related to one another. So we'll take one example, that is a teacher and a department. So how you are going to represent the entity? Entity is represented in the form of rectangle. And next is the attributes. These are the attributes. And this diamond is for, you can say that this is for relationship. So this entity and this entity are related with one of the relationship. And what is the relationship? Works for. And these are the attributes of the entity. Okay, so I hope you understand about the ER model. It is a high level data model. It is a pictorial representation of your data for which you will be using entity, attributes and relationship. In upcoming videos, we'll be studying in depth about the ER model because it is very important to draw the proper ER model for your project. Next is the relational model. Relational model. It is a most widely used model. In this model, the data is represented or maintained in the form of table, or you can say in the two-dimensional table. If anyone asks you that what is relational model, what do you understand by the word relation, then relation over here is relation in the term of model is the tables. So tables are also called as the relation. So don't get confused between relationship that we have seen in the ER model and relation in the relational model. So in the relational model, the table are called as a relation. How your data will be represented? Your data will be organized or maintained. It is maintained in the form of two-dimensional table. All the information will be stored in the form of rows and columns. So you can say the basic structure of the relational model is the table. Understood? What is relational model? Relational model is the most widely used model. The data is maintained in the form of two dimensions. You are going to store your data in the form of tables. And this table is also called as the relation. Relation tables, they can be used. Now, next we will study is what is tuples and what are the fields. So, over here you can see that each row, for example, this is the relation for the course table. Course data, and whatever name you give for your table is the name of the relation. Next is the attributes or the columns, that is the course, duration, type. These are the attributes. These are the attributes. A table must have a unique column name, and each row is also called as the tuples. Relation is the table. Attributes are the columns. If you are going to create a table and you are going to add a number of columns to it, each of the column name should be unique for a particular table. Whatever relation you are going to define, that will study in a further part, and whatever data is there in the form of rows, that is the tuples. So relational model is the most widely used data models. So each row in the table are called as a tuple, and you can say that it contains the information about any instance of a object, and the attributes or the columns are nothing but the properties. It is a properties of a particular relation. For example, if you are going to create a teacher table, then Attributes will be, columns will be name, age, address, qualification, salary. Everything will be the attributes. So you can go on adding more and more data to it. That is, you can add more number of rows also, and you can alter your table, and you can add number of column also. So you can say this relational model is highly scalable. So this is all about the relational model. Next is the object-oriented data model. Object-oriented data model means it is a combination of object-oriented programming and relational model. The data and their relationship are contained in a single structure which is referred as an object in this data model. What you are going to use? You are going to use the concept of object-oriented programming. What is the object? Real-world entity. So you are going to use the data and the relationship of an object. Real world problems are represented as an object with the different attributes. All the objects have multiple relationship between them. So you can say object is a entity, and over here you will be using the concept of object oriented programming, complete object oriented concept you are going to use, plus you will be using the relational data model. So how you are going to represent using the object oriented data model? There will be class name, there will be attributes and operation. For example, class name. First was the class name, attributes and operation. So class name is employee and department. So your object are employee object and the department object. And like you are thinking in the ER model as an entity, over here we'll be using the word object. So employee object and the department object. What are the attributes of the employee? Name, job title, phone number. These are the attributes. Similarly, what are the attributes of the department? Department ID, department name are the attributes of the department. What are the methods? Now methods are the piece of code that will work on a particular object. That is a get hired, change name, add data, delete data. So everything are the methods. And by the concept of foreign key and the primary key, how the elements are being related, you'll use such kind of relationship. So in the object oriented data model, you have to remember that object oriented data model is a combination of object oriented programming plus relational model. In object oriented programming, you are going to create a class, then you'll be defining the property of a class, then you'll be using the method that will work on that particular object. Similarly, over here also you'll be using such kind of method to show how the elements are interrelated between each other. And this is the example, that is, for example, employee object and the department object. These are the attributes, and next are the methods. So students, in future you will be creating a project, and after your project, before you start implementing your database, you need to create your data model, how exactly it will be related. And for that purpose, the concept of data model is very important. I hope that you have understood about the various data models. Thank you for watching the lecture, and if you like my lecture, kindly like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.